Ashes by J.C. Jarrett. Chapter 9. Two Hearts. The gray, overcast sky seemed to go on forever in the lowlands near the town of Oak Grove. The grass was dead and matched the sky in its color, crunching softly under the hard-heeled boots of Jana DeMarco. Jana was tall and slender, her leather armor and winter clothes well worn. She pushed back the green hood of her cloak, shaking loose long strands of golden blonde hair tied back in a large braid. Her wrist rested softly on the hilts of a pair of straight sabers in ornate scabbards at her hips. She seemed out of place in this crowd of mostly rough-looking men. Milling about the large wagons of the winter caravan was 20 or so hopeful to be selected as caravan guards. The crowd was rowdy, and more than once it seemed a fight would break out, but it never started. Rand Westlake stood tall with a large two-handed sword across his back. His well-oiled, iron-studded leather armor showed cracks of wear and the signs of battle. The man next to him seemed more out of place here than any other, standing nearly 7 foot tall, with a huge mane of wild brown hair. Kudon was a barbarian of the desert of dunes, many leagues to the south of here. He wore heavy fur and crude leather to fight the cold, but still bulging cords of thick muscles were very visible along his bare arms. Setting next to him was maybe the biggest hammer anyone had ever seen. The head of it was the size of a brandy keg, with nearly a 4-foot-long handle. The flash of golden hair caught Rand's attention, and his heart quickened and beat when his dark eyes met the ice-blue eyes of Jana. "Kudon, would you look at her?" he said, never taking his eyes off her. Kudon looked at Jana, his nose wrinkling in a bit of displeasure. "Yeah, I see her," the barbarian said in a heavy accent. "Far too tiny to rear healthy children. You need large health, woman." Rand looked at his companion with a bit of confusion showing on his face. Shaking his head, he looked back toward Jana, who was no longer there. Jana stood talking with a heavy-set man in fine traveling clothes. "Yes, Raff Staten gave you glowing praise and said you came out of nowhere and saved his entire family," the large man said to Jana. "I was up in a tree catching a few hours of sleep for the night when his wagon rolled past waking me," she said, remembering the events of a few nights ago. "I watched as he and his family moved along the road. Then from the wood came an orc and 3 goblins. I was not sure of their intentions, but I could hear the laughter of the children and could not risk it. The goblins fell quickly and quietly, the orc not even noticing, its gaze on the children. But Raff heard the orc scream when I cut it down," she finished. Reaching out, the well-dressed man shook her hand and stated, "I am Captain Tarn, and you have a spot in the guard for this last trip." Jana smiled and thanked the caravan captain, then moved off to prepare her equipment for the long trip to Fort Cabinet. Fort Cabinet is the only pass down from deep inside the Empress Mountains, the only path that allows you to cross the Great Gorge. At the edge of the Empress Mountains lies the Great Gorge, a 3,000-foot-deep ravine of jagged rock. By blocking this pass, the giants, goblinoids, and other evil creatures are trapped behind walls. But this leaves Fort Cabinet needing regular supply deliveries. Caravan trips head up to deliver supplies at the beginning of every season, the largest being this one at the onset of winter. Rand watched the exchange, but with all the noise of the crowd, was unable to hear what Jana and the captain spoke of. He so wanted to know her name and everything about her. Rand suddenly realized that Kudon was still rambling on to him. And during the chill winter nights, a large, healthy woman is much better than even a fire. Rand looked again, at Kudon, but this time in disbelief. Captain Tarn stepped up onto a barrel, so he could be seen by the milling crowd of rough and gruff-looking people. Clearing his throat, he began, Okay, simmer down." He waved his hands in a calming motion. "This winter is a large shipment. We will be needing several caravan guards." He fumbled, putting on a pair of golden round glasses, and shuffled a few sheets of parchment. "This winter's guards will be Rubeus Trimble, Gulna of Drast, Rand Westlake, Kudon, and finally Jana DeMarco. Thank you all. See you next season." After this statement, he stumbled down from the barrel and moved away, ignoring the non-selected people, who were begging to be reconsidered. Jana moved deeper into the caravan camp, and finally stopped near a small cook fire. Reaching out both hands, she warmed them at the fire. She watched the camp's hustle and bustle of the loading of the wagons and preparation for departure in the morning. She noticed the tall, dark-haired man and his strange barbarian companion enter the camp with two others in tow. One was a highborn, a rare sight this far north, and the other a thin, rat-faced man. The highborn was tall and slender, shouldered, dressed in mostly the green and tans of the forest. This contrasted starkly with his pale alabaster-white skin, golden eyes, and long black hair tied in a loose ponytail. Across his back hung a quiver full of arrows and a longbow, while on his hip sat comfortably a wide-bladed short sword. The other was the odd man out of this group. While most had visible weapons about their person, this rat-faced man had only a small dagger with a bright, sparkling yellow gem set in its hilt. His clothing was out of place as well, where the others had on muted colors or armor of some sort. He wore a long black coat over a stark white shirt and purple vest. But the most shocking was the tall black boots, with a polish so high you could see reflections in them. "Jana DeMarco?" Rand asked, putting out a hand toward her. Jana looked at the offered hand and then up into the dark eyes of the man in front of her, eyes so dark that the pupil and iris could not be distinguished. She was unsure of these men she was paired with. She took the leap by taking his offered hand as a sign of good faith. "That's right," she said. "And you are?" Rand smiled sheepishly at her, seeming unsure what he should say, or who he even was. Now up close, he found himself lost in her ice-blue eyes. "Me? He began as his tongue stumbled over his words. Finally his thoughts and his mouth joined forces, and he was able to say, "Rand Westlake, and I am at your service." Peyton smiled at his mother's tale, for it brought back the memory of him introducing himself to Elisa for the first time. The thought of her quickly stole his smile, as his mind found its way back quickly to the harsh reality of her loss. Jana paused her tale as she watched a moment of happiness appear on his face, then quickly replaced it with anger and sadness. She never wanted to take a person in her arms more and just comfort them than this moment, but in this ghostly form she was little more than mist. So she closed her eyes and continued on with her tale. Night had fallen upon the caravan camp. Jana returned to the fire, now much larger than it was before, after a quick patrol of the camp's perimeter. There around the fire sat Rand and the rat-faced man, who was eating a bowl of stew. Jana sat down next to Rand, not yet knowing the rat-faced man, and getting an odd feeling from him she could not explain. "Well, hello there," the rat-faced man said toward Jana, as he ran a finger across his thin mustache. Her odd feel suddenly she had near him escalated to an uneasiness, almost a bit of fear. For such a small man, he gave off an air of a predator, or like a vulture over a corpse. "My name is Rubius. You must be Jana." He raked his tongue over his teeth, "And may I say, you are strikingly beautiful." Jana was a bit taken back by Rubius's overbearing demeanor. "I would rather you not," she said, in a flat tone. Rubius stood with a look of shock across his rat-like features. "Do you know who I am?" The thin man started as he got to his feet. "Should I have?" Quickly cutting him off, Jana sharply responded. The rat-faced man's right-hand fingers began to glow a white light, as the wizard seemed ready to attack. Jana was instantly to her feet, her hands dropping to her straight saber hilts. Rand was suddenly in Rubius's way, his left hand on the slender man's chest. "I would say you are someone that is about to get hurt," Rand said in a voice devoid of emotion, sending chills up the wizard's spine. The white glow blinked a few times, then faded from the wizard's hand. The slender man turned and walked away in a huff, knowing that at that close range he would not stand a chance versus two warriors. Rand then turned to Jana, expecting to see a smile of gratitude, but was surprised by the look of anger on her beautiful face. "I did not need you to rescue me." She spat the words at him in annoyance. "Never said you couldn't." Rand replied a bit taken back, then was suddenly cut off by the fiery blonde. "I am as capable as you or anyone here, and I don't need you to defend me from the likes of that," she said, pointing to where Rubius have run off to. "I don't need rescued." With that she turned, storming away from the fire. This is going to be a fun trip, Rand said to himself in sarcasm as he stood alone. The next day, though the sun was high in the sky, there was little warmth in the air. The chill was not only in the air, but from Janna and Rubius as well. I'd have hit him hard enough he would not have gotten up, the barbarian stated in his deeply accented voice. That would have been worse, I feel, Rand stated back to the huge man as they walked along with the wagons. He glanced up at the large wooden-topped wagon. Seated upon the roof was Janna, who was scanning the horizon for signs of trouble. She seemed to sense his gaze, and turned to look his way. He smiled and waved her way, to only get a blank look and her looking away from him. Yeah, it's very cold today, in more ways than the weather. Before noon, the caravan came to a halt in a clearing near the small town of Crimson Hallow. Crimson Hallow was named for the dark wood, where the leaves of the trees are shades of red, that is in the area. The trees in this area are all dark and twisted, and have been so for several centuries. The tale is that a traveling group of monks was murdered in the grove. That grove was bright and green, but now seems tainted by evil. People claim the area is haunted or cursed, but still a small community has sprung up here. The small town was built around a huge forge. The blacksmith decades ago had discovered the black wood burned in a way that placed a near magical property upon the metal worked in its flames, causing weapons and armor to be dozens of times stronger than the norm. The caravan circled, creating a perimeter, starting a large cook fire and pitching tents for the night's stay. The caravan was picking up a load of weapons and armor for the cabinet militia that would not be ready till the morning. Being so close to the town guards will be handling the patrol of the area, giving the caravan guards the night off. As night fell on the camp, several of the caravan workers found themselves sitting around the large campfire. Janna sat with a handful of roasted nuts, absently munching as she listened to the stories being told around the fire. Rand was in the middle of a tale where he had fought off a dire bear, saving a goblin that he ended up befriending. Rand kept looking Janna's way, trying to judge the woman's reaction to his tale. He was saddened to see she seemed unimpressed with his exploits, and could not contain his disappointment in her reaction of lack thereof. So, from the look on your face, you do not approve. What would you have done differently? He said to her. Me, she said, pointing to herself in a bit of confusion. I would have let the dire bear have its meal, and left it at that. This raised a roar of laughter from around the fire. Is that because you couldn't handle the bear? Rand poked at her with a friendly smile on his face. Janna looked him in the eye, a slight mischievous twinkle in hers. I could definitely handle anything you could, and more, she said. Rand smiled. Sounds like a challenge. The people of the camp formed a large circle, with Rand and Janna inside. The two had eyes locked on each other, as they took off cloaks and extra gear. Flat of blades only. First to give? He asked, and Janna answered with a nod. Rand stood, holding his huge two-handed sword easily in his right hand, but Janna stood with her slender straight sabers still in her belted scabbards. Rand raised his sword and brought it around in an arcing swing toward the motionless blonde beauty. He began to suddenly panic at her, not showing a sign of defending. Faster than his eye could follow, her hands gripped her swords, flicking them from their scabbards, and caught the incoming blade in the same motion. A marveled group of shock expressions came from the crowd. Locked together, blade on blade, the pair looked at each other. Then what can only be called a dance began. Janna spun and twisted her sabers, flashing in the firelight, her golden braid flying behind her. The three swords crashed together, both attacking and expertly defending. The combatants moved about the circle in near unison. The ringing of steel brought even the town guards to watch the spectacle of this competition. Neither seemed able to score a point. Rand's breath began to labor, and sweat started to glisten on both brows. The two-handed sword rushed in toward Janna's midsection and was quickly blocked by the left saber, as the right saber shot out going for Rand's thigh. The blade seemed to move in slow motion to Rand, but he could not get his sword around in time to defend, and felt the stinging slap as its flat side panged off him. The crowd called out jeers and insulted him for being the receiver of the first hit. A smile turned the corners of her lips as her eyes sparkled with glee, even though he had taken the hit. Rand returned her smile. Rand feinted in an overhead attack that brought the spinning sabers of Janna high. Faster than the young woman could react, his blade dove in and scored a stinging whack on her shoulder, making the score 1-1. Arms moving slower and legs getting weaker, the pair continued to attack, parry, attack over and over. The battle had been ongoing for nearly 10 minutes when Rand lowered his sword and stepped back. Janna watched his actions and followed suit, the pair looking at each other with a newfound fondness. "Do you give?" he asked with a bit of joviality in his voice. "Not on your life," she said with a grin. "Well then, I surrender myself to you," Rand said, leaving the statement open-ended. Janna not missing the hidden meaning of his words, she stepped forward as the large man took a knee to her. Sheathing her blades, she reached out a hand to help the man to his feet. As he stood, the two ended up close together, her ice-blue eyes looking deeply into his dark orbs. The moment seemed to last forever to the pair, and they both knew something had changed between them. As the crowd dispersed, a set of eyes peered over a long, rat-like nose at the pair of warriors. Rubius' mind whirled with ideas of what he may do with these sudden developments. Rand and Janna stood close, unaware of the gaze of the rat-faced man, their hands still together while their two hearts seemed to beat as one.